You were never meant to hear this story, because it cracks the illusion that the systems around you, those neat rows of houses, friendly handshakes, and printed rules, are just suburban organization. They're not. They're power structures, tiny empires, ruled by petty tyrants who smile in daylight and legislate in shadow. That night, as the red and blue lights reflected off my garage, I realized just how deep the rot went. My son's gear, military issued, wrapped in plastic to shield it from the rain, was being examined like contraband, not by thieves, not by terrorists, but by cops, called by a woman who lived 2 doors down. She didn't ask, she didn't knock. She dialed 911 because a soldier's duffel bags didn't fit her vision of control. Officer Daniels turned to me, polite but sharp. "Sir, can you explain what these are?" And behind him stood Patricia Holloway, the HOA president. Her arms folded like she was watching a courtroom drama and playing both judge and jury. Her smirk said everything. She wasn't here for safety. She was here for dominance, for the satisfaction of watching a man kneel. I said what any father would say. "My son deployed to Afghanistan last week. That's his gear. I'm keeping it safe until he comes home." But Patricia took a step forward, voice sweet as antifreeze. "Well, how do we know they're not dangerous?" Dangerous. A folded American flag and 2 green duffels. She wasn't just attacking me, she was erasing his service, his sacrifice. And that's when something inside me broke, not like snapping, like waking up. I watched the officers leave. One nodded and thanked me. The other told me to thank my son. But Patricia looked me in the eye and said, "This isn't over." She was right. It wasn't. And neither is this story, because what followed next wasn't a simple neighborhood feud. It was a war over meaning, over control, over what kind of man you're allowed to be in the world today. So I'm going to tell you the whole truth, because no one else will. Stay with me, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And by the end of this video, you won't be the same man who started it. They say real power doesn't shout, it whispers. In meeting rooms, in paperwork, in unspoken rules etched in fine print. Patricia didn't need a gavel or a badge. She had something stronger, fear disguised as policy, the kind of fear that makes good men lower their eyes when they walk past injustice, just to avoid the paperwork. 2 days after the police came, a bright yellow notice was taped to my door. Unsightly items visible from the street, remove within 72 hours or face daily fines of 50. No explanation, no courtesy, just a cold warning written in bureaucratic venom. I walked next door to Tom, an old friend and Vietnam vet who had been here longer than me. "Did you see the cops the other night?" I asked. He nodded, jaw tight. "She's gone too far this time, but she runs that board like a dictator." A dictator. That word lingered in my mind longer than it should have. Over the next few days, the violations kept coming. Improper storage of personal items, failure to maintain aesthetic standards, non-compliance with previous notice. They were stacking fines like poker chips, daring me to blink. And Patricia, she wasn't hiding. She stood on the edge of my lawn, clipboard in hand, scribbling like some twisted scribe of suburban law. Sometimes she just watched, silent, smiling, a predator in pearls. "You know, Mr. Peterson," she cooed one morning, "if you can't follow simple rules, maybe this isn't the right neighborhood for you." That was the moment I stopped being polite. "My son is serving this country," I said, stepping closer, "and those bags are staying until he comes home." She tilted her head and smiled like she was watching a child throw a tantrum. "We'll see about that. I'm recommending legal action at the next board meeting." And just like that, I knew. This wasn't about my son's gear. This was about control, about forcing submission, about king examples of men who don't bow. That night I couldn't sleep. I pictured Jake, half a world away, trusting me to protect his gear, his pride, his symbol. I'd given him my word. And I was about to go to war, not with fists, not with rage, but with something Patricia feared even more than resistance. Knowledge. If you're still watching, comment. Symbols of service. Twice. Lock it in. Let the algorithm know you're not just hearing this. You're remembering who you are. I drove to the county courthouse with one mission: find the truth buried in ink and ordinance. You see, tyrants thrive on ignorance. They count on you not reading the fine print. But I was done playing checkers in a game of chess. The HOA's bylaws weren't locked in a vault. They were public record, hiding in plain sight like a loaded weapon left on a table. And what I found? Patricia had broken nearly every rule she swore to enforce. No proper board elections in years. No official meeting minutes. No recorded notices sent within legally required timeframes. Her authority? Built on sand. Her power? A mirage, sustained only by our silence. I took everything, photocopied it, highlighted every violation, and drove straight to Sarah Chen's law office. She specialized in HOA disputes, but more than that, she understood the psychology of control. She didn't just see a legal case. She saw the anatomy of a regime. After scanning the documents and hearing my story, Sarah leaned back in her chair and said 5 words I'll never forget. This is harassment, plain and simple. She showed me the real leverage. 75% of homeowners could vote to dissolve the HOA entirely. It didn't need violence, just truth, properly wielded. So I started small. I talked to Tom, then Maria, then Bill. Everyone had their own story, each one worse than mine. Maria's daughter had drawn a chalk rainbow on their driveway for her birthday. Patricia fined them $7 for graffiti. David Kim's elderly mother placed small cultural ornaments on their porch. Patricia called them foreign clutter. Bill, a disabled veteran, had been ordered to remove his Support Our Troops flag because it didn't match neighborhood tones. This wasn't rule enforcement, it was ideological control. We formed a resistance. Quiet meetings in living rooms, whispered conversations over fences. Sarah joined us one night and laid it all out. You have 2 options. Replace the board or burn it down legally. Maria didn't hesitate. Dissolve it, she said, fire in her eyes. We don't need a new dictator with better manners. And just like that, a movement was born. We needed 25% of homeowners to call a special vote. We got 40% in 3 days. Patricia didn't see it coming, but she would, soon, because the deeper a tyrant's roots, the louder the crack when they fall, and we were sharpening the axe. Power doesn't die quietly, it thrashes. And Patricia, she wasn't going down without drawing blood. The moment she caught wind of our petition, the gloves came off. She filed 3 new violations against me in a single day. 1 for oil stains on my driveway, stains that had been there for years. Another for mailbox numbers she claimed weren't in regulation font. And the last? For an unauthorized patriotic display. That was the tiny American flag I had planted next to Jake's gear, a symbol of service now labeled a code violation. And then came the second police visit. This time her complaint was that the gear was attracting rodents. I watched the officers approach, eyes tired, voices apologetic. We're really sorry, sir. We had to respond, but we know this is nonsense. One officer even muttered, "You've got a target on your back." She wanted to break me, to humiliate me into surrender. But what she didn't understand, what people like her never understand, is that when you push a man who has nothing left to lose, you don't get submission, you get transformation. Her desperation backfired. Each outrageous violation, each petty act of control, only pulled more neighbors into our cause. Even the ones who had stayed quiet, who had feared her clipboard and passive-aggressive smiles, now saw her for what she was, a paranoid monarch clutching a throne no one respected. She knocked on my door the night before the vote. Her smile was brittle, her tone sugar-laced. "Robert, let's be reasonable. I'll waive all your fines if you stop this dissolution nonsense." I stepped outside and looked her dead in the eye. "You involved my deployed son. That was your line in the sand, Patricia. You crossed it." Her eyes narrowed. The mask dropped. "You'll regret this. I'll sue everyone. I'll make your lives miserable." I didn't flinch. "You already have." She stormed off, but he didn't know what we knew. The vote was already locked. We had 88% confirmed. The next night, the community center was packed. Sarah ensured everything was done by the book. Ballots, notices, a neutral vote counter. Patricia screamed, "This is illegal!" But no one listened. We weren't her subjects anymore. We were men reclaiming sovereignty. And when the final count came in, we didn't just end an HOA. We ended her reign. The silence before the vote result felt heavier than combat. People shifted in their chairs. Some clenched fists. Others stared at the floor like they were bracing for impact. At the front of the room, Patricia sat rigid, her jaw tight, her eyes darting like a cornered animal. This wasn't just a meeting. This was her last stand. Judge Morrison, the neutral facilitator, stood and read the count. 88% in favor. The Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association is hereby dissolved. For a second, no one moved. Then, applause. Slow at first, then erupting like a dam breaking. It wasn't just celebration, it was release. Liberation. Patricia shot to her feet, face flushed with fury. This is fraud. You've destroyed everything I've worked for. You'll all regret this, every last one of you. Two neighbors calmly escorted her out as she screamed threats about lawsuits and property values and trailer park anarchy. But the truth was written on every face in that room. The spell had been broken. The fear had died. Sarah leaned over to me, calm and certain. By the way, she said, all those fines, voided. And if she sues anyone, we counter with harassment. It was over. 3 weeks later, I was planting flowers next to Jake's gear. The flag still stood, brighter now under a fresh coat of varnish. A wooden sign beneath it read, Proud Army Dad. No HOA, no clipboard queen, just me, my son's legacy, and a front yard that finally felt like mine. Then, the moving truck pulled up to Patricia's house. She didn't say goodbye, didn't wave, just climbed into the front seat like she was fleeing the scene of her own collapse. Word spread she'd tried to run for board president again, this time in a new neighborhood. But when they Googled her name, the articles about our HOA dissolution came up, unanimously rejected. Now, she lives in a condo. No board to rule, no power to abuse. Just 4 walls and silence. That's the thing about people who build identities on control. They don't survive freedom. Patricia needed the HOA to feel big. Without it, she was just ordinary, and that terrified her more than any petition ever could. But we didn't just win. We remembered who we were, and we'll never forget again. Jake came home 6 months later. His boots hit the driveway like thunder in my chest. He looked older, sharper, a man forged by fire, and when he saw his gear still sitting safely beside the garage, flag flying, flowers blooming, that handmade sign reading Proud Army Dad, he just stood there for a moment, staring. Then he said, "You kept your promise." But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was how that promise changed everything. Because this wasn't just about bags or bylaws. This was about the line in every man's life where silence ends and sovereignty begins. Patricia didn't just try to find me, she tried to make me choose between peace and principle, between being liked and being right. And here's the truth they don't want you to realize. Every system, every HOA, every job, every office where people smile and smile hides a Patricia, someone who clings to control because they fear freedom. And they will test you. Not all at once, but slowly, with rules, with shame, with pressure so soft you don't even feel it tightening until one day you look in the mirror and see a man who's forgotten how to say no. But not you. Not anymore. Because you've seen it now. What happens when one man stands up and refuses to bow? When he trades comfort for clarity? When he takes back what was always his? I didn't just end an HOA. I dismantled a structure built on fear. I woke my neighborhood up. And maybe, just maybe, I woke you up too. So here's what I want you to do. If you've ever been pushed, at work, in your home, by some clipboard tyrant or faceless policy, drop a comment right now. Never again, never again. Say it twice. Lock it in. This isn't just a story about a flag or a father. It's a blueprint for every man who's been told to shrink, obey, comply. You were never meant to be small, so the next time someone knocks on your door with a rule book and a smirk, you remember this. They can take your grass measurements, they can find your mailbox numbers, but they'll never own your spirit, not unless you hand it to them. And brother, you're not handing over anything anymore.